Hi everyone, and welcome to this week's video. My name is Angel DeSantis. I am going to talk about trying to make it through the holidays with your family or your pastor or whoever it was who maybe contributed to the trauma that you feel you suffer from. So if you are here and you are suffering from PTSD or CPTSD, but now it's the holidays and you feel obligated to go to functions, whether it's family functions or church functions. I know a lot of us feel, even though we are removed from the situation, we feel obligated to go like show face or keep the peace or just do sort of an act in order to maintain some sort of like societal norm. And a lot of us feel obligated to do this, which is what I will talk about. But I do want to give you 2 tips in this video of how to make it through these interactions, because these interactions are really difficult. And sometimes it does feel like you don't have a choice. You have to do this. So that's going to be this week's video. I'm getting better at remembering, so please click like and subscribe because it does help. And let's talk about the 2 things. But first, let's talk about the setup, because the main thing that I want to remind you of, if this is the one thing that you leave this video with, I want to remind you that you have personal agency. You have the power to choose what it is that you are going to do. You have the power to enter situations, and you have the power to leave them. And for some reason, when it comes to be Thanksgiving time or Christmas time or somebody's birthday or whatever it is, we sometimes lose a sense of personal agency. We feel like we have to go do this, otherwise the family is going to be mad, or we have to go tolerate this person, or we have to keep this person's secret. And what I really want to remind you of, especially if you find yourself obligated a lot, is you have personal agency. You have the power to choose everywhere and always. That's the one thing that you have, is you have the power to choose. And so if you find yourself feeling obligated a lot, I'm going to remind you of that power that you have to choose. And you can also choose, and I said this last year as well, you can choose to have this holiday season be the last holiday season that you spend with these people who you feel have contributed to your oppression. You do not need to spend time with people you do not want to. You do not need to break bread with your abusers. You do not. And I understand feeling obligated to do so. But you have personal choice. You have agency. Remember that first. So that wasn't one of the tips. That's just the main thing in order to heal from any sort of CPTSD. You have personal agency. But now I will talk about the tips. So my first tip to making it through something that you feel obligated to go through and that may or may not involve the people who hurt you is to identify your main objective. And my suggestion is to gamify it, but identify your main objective. And for some of us, it's making it through. For me, I have a family member, and every time I speak to them on the phone, they bring up the vaccines. And they start this whole thing, and my objective is to make it through the phone call without having to talk about Joe Biden. And if you're like, oh, I have a comment on that, don't. My objective is to make it through without talking about it, because that's never the issue. So if you feel the need to tell me why he's the issue, don't. My main objective is to make it through without it. But with this person who calls me, somehow, it doesn't matter what we're talking about, they will wind their way around and they will meander somehow to talking about Joe Biden. And so my objective is to make it through the conversation without reacting to that. And so when they do start to bring it up, I'll sidestep it, or I'll ignore it, or I'll take the conversation somewhere else because I don't want to talk about it. And that's my main objective. And so for you, if you're going into an interaction, identify your main objective. Is it making it through without talking about something that bothers you? Is it making it through without feeling like you have to go back into your shell? What is it? Why are you going to this place? Do you remember that you have personal agency? And what is your main objective? How do you want to make it through? So I think having a main objective can be really fun. Sometimes I have I'll pick something really outlandish, like my main objective is to make it through dinner without throwing something across the table. Never in my life have I ever thrown anything across the table. But when somebody starts to bother me, I have the conversation with myself of like, Angel, don't throw anything across the table. And then that becomes funny to me. And then I'm trying to achieve my main objective, which is not throwing something across the table, but that becomes fun for me. So I still have a good experience, even though the person on the other side maybe is like trying to like, nag at me or trying to get a reaction out of me. I can just be calm because my main objective is to not throw anything across the table. So if you feel obligated to go into these situations, ask yourself what your main objective is, and then gamify it and really try and achieve your main objective. So that's number one. And then number two, in order to achieve number one, is to let the idea that you have of yourself go. And I will explain what I mean by that. But a lot of times we have an idea of who we are. And because we're trying to gain personal agency, the picture that we have in our head about ourselves can mean a lot to us. But when you go into these situations that have psychologically really crumbled you, or situations where psychologically they really try and make you feel very small, when you take a version of yourself that means a lot to you into that situation, sometimes these people are so good at tearing you down that they will immediately know how to try and dig at you and to try and get a reaction out of you and be like, oh, this person started to work on themselves, how quaint, or all those things of like, I've had people be like, oh, like Angel likes all that self-help bullshit. And then I'm like, well, I don't think it's bullshit. And they're like, no, of course you don't, because you're helping yourself. And if it meant a lot to me to have this person see my version of myself, I would have reacted. But because I'm willing to let my idea of myself go, I don't need to control what other people think of me. I don't need them to see the version of myself that I have. So I'm able to be like, yeah, I do like self-help bullshit, as you call it. Yeah, I really like helping myself. I think it's great. And then I feel a lot less the need to like really prove myself, because I understand in that situation, I have to let it go. They are never going to see me the way that I see me. I like the version of myself that I have in my head. But when I go into that situation, I need to let it go. I can't defend it. I can't really try and like bring it to the forefront and be like, this is who I am now. That's not the situation for it. I just have to get through that situation without throwing something across the table, because that was my main objective. But I think it's important, if you are going into some sort of interaction with somebody who you would rather not be in interaction with, and there's a part of you that's kind of afraid about how is this interaction going to go, think about, one, what is your main objective? How can you gamify it and make it fun for yourself? And two, let the idea of yourself go so that you can go into the situation as an observer instead of needing to prove yourself. Because you never need to prove yourself to the people who harmed you. That's never a thing that needs to happen. You don't need to prove anything. You need to make it through and achieve your main objective. So my tips are, one, identify your main objective, and two, let the idea of yourself go when you're in that situation. That's not the situation for you to try and prove anything. That is a situation for you to get through without throwing something across the table. And it is okay if you feel obligated to go and then you feel terrible. That's normal. But if you're trying to get back to agency and you're trying to get back to a place of power, then when you leave that situation, as soon as possible, start making choices for yourself again. Because a lot of times when we go into this situation, it's not our choice to be there. It feels like we're not making a choice, even though we are. It feels like we're not making a choice. So when you leave that situation, if you feel disempowered, start making good, informed choices for yourself as quickly as possible. Be really compassionate with yourself, but make choices for yourself again as quickly as possible. And always remember, this can be the last holiday season or the last time that you go into a situation that you are uncomfortable with. You have personal agency. You have the ability to decide things for yourself. So remember that, because that will save you every time. So those are my tips. I hope that this was helpful. Try not to throw anything across the table. If you do, just tell me about it. Tell me what you threw. Mashed potatoes would be a fun thing, but I don't want to incite violence, so I will end the video. But I wish you luck. I know that these things are difficult, and you are not alone. But this can be the last holiday season that you spend with them. This can be the last time you make a choice to do something that you don't want to do. So remember who you are. Remember that you have the power to choose. Best of luck, and I will see you next week.